Hi, welcome to the channel. This is Beyond Authentic Witchcraft. My name's Lisa, and today for a Spooktober deck review, I have the Macabre Tarot. Now, it comes in this lovely box, so if you want to see what's in the coffin, stay tuned. So I actually bought this deck last year. In fact, I got it on pre-order. That's how much I wanted this deck last year. And then one reason or another, things happened and I didn't actually manage to use it. But I have had it for a year. Now, one of the things that have happened in the last 12 months, unfortunately, I don't know whether you're going to be able to pick that up on camera. It now sounds a little bit like a squeaking hamster, or like a little ratty or something. So it's actually supposed to be the sound effect of like a door, or obviously a coffin creaking open. It's supposed to go, I'm going to grab the little book out. So it comes with quite not a very big sort of guidebook, and then the cards themselves. Now there's no fancy sort of lining or anything like that. It's just black plastic. Obviously all the expense went in the little sound chip here, but the box itself, as you can see, is coffin shaped. It's really nicely done all the way around with this sort of spiders, eyes, crystals, and then the gold embossing there with the name on. So it's a really beautiful looking deck. So as you can see, the book itself has the similar sort of artwork from the coffin, although this isn't actually gold embossed. I just moved the cards to one side, and it's not a very detailed book, to be honest with you. I mean, it is, what, how many pages? Does it give us a page count? 90 pages, including bits about the author, the intro pages, the indexes, and a couple of spreads. So there's not a lot of information in here. But, you know, each card has a paragraph or so and a couple of keywords. So it gives you the very basics. But if you're looking for a guidebook that's going to give you lots of information, this is not the guidebook for you. However, I've got to say, look at these cards. Look at the embossing. Look at that gold. It's absolutely stunning. In fact, one of the other decks that I'm reviewing in this Spooktober deck review series also has a very, very beautiful embossing, and that's also a rock pool deck. So this is what the back of the deck looks like. I love this style of deck backs. I love the fact that it's completely universal, so it's the same whichever way up it is, which I absolutely love, because it means as I'm doing a reading for someone, the person I'm reading for, the querent or the client, that person then can completely be reassured that the readings I'm giving are without any bias from me. So even if I'm reading, like doing a 10-card spread, if as I'm laying them out, I'm going, oh, reversal, 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 there's no way that I can sort of in any way alter that, because it's exactly the same whichever way up it is. It takes that question out of the querent's mind, which is again something I really like having in the decks. Right then, let's look at the decks. Now you'll see instantly this is a very different style of tarot deck from the traditional, from the Rider-Waite. So I am going to use my little videos. Now, if you've ever watched me on some of the recent tarot live streams every Tuesday and Sunday evening at 7 p.m. UK time, got to get the plug in, then you will have seen me use these little animations, because again, with a lot of decks, they are so different from the standard Rider-Waite Smith that everyone's used to. So I've got some animations that are a little bit more similar to the standard sort of depiction. So I'll use those as we go through. So the Fool, this is a wonderful Fool card. Look, you can see it's a mask. So this card is asking about the masks that we wear, the journeys we go on. We've got an open head here, so completely devoid of knowledge, so very innocent. I do like this sort of weird art style of these cards. I really do. So you've got this very, very different from the standard Fool, which is normally obviously walking off a cliff and, you know, very different iconography. But for me, it still gives that. And I like the details here of the inner self coming through. You're speaking your truth, as arguably only a Fool can do, because he hasn't learnt, or they haven't learnt, to lie yet. So I love some of that iconography. Again, we'll look at the book in a little bit and see what some of their keywords say. The Magician, we've got, would you say this is a fox or a rabbit or some sort of woodland creature? And we've got the infinity symbol seen in quite a lot of the magicians, and you can see the tools. Now obviously in a standard magician it's a bit more obvious. Quite often you see one arm raised, it's the as above so below. You haven't got that iconography here, but we have got the 4 tools of the tarot deck changed slightly for this deck. So you'll see there's a little bit of a clue here. We've got a bone instead of a wand, a crystal instead of a pentacle or a pentagram, a dagger instead of a sword, and then we've got the standard cups. So you've got this sort of image, but again, this is almost Donnie Darko. I love this sort of image with the haunting black eyes, and you've got this mystical smoke coming up at the background there at the bottom of the card. So again, it's got that real sort of heaviness, that weight of the magician card. So you've still got the tools, you've still got the power here, the ability to, you know, alter the world around you and to make things manifest as you so wish. It's just been given a more dark, macabre twist, which is obviously the name of the cards. So the High Priestess becomes the Divine, which again I've seen used in other decks. I love this, that it's going back to this sort of divine energy. So this real connection with energy here. You've got plants, you've got crystals, and then we've got the all-seeing eye. And you can kind of see now, for me, that image in the center almost looks like a person looking back at you. Almost looks like a figure. I don't know whether it's supposed to be that or whether it's just like a little trick of the light. But then we've got the moon phases. And of course, that brings in the standard sort of goddess energy, that standard sort of almost Wiccan priestess sort of vibe. Again, I love the simplicity of the card, but also the fact that we've got these very elaborate lashes giving us that true sort of goddess energy, if you like. And then we've got what would be the Empress in a standard deck. So the standard deck of the Empress, quite a classical depiction of stereotypical motherhood, but this card has been renamed as the Ethereal. So it's the kind of that ethereal spirit that connects everybody and is life itself, which I kind of like how this is depicted. It's almost depicted as a sort of almost demonic force, but I don't think it actually means that, even though, as you can see, the figure is holding an anatomical heart. So again, a very different depiction. We're definitely going to have to check the guidebook on this. It is, as many of you will know, it's one of my favorite cards in the entire tarot deck. Eventually it's going to be a tattoo, I've decided. The Emperor, instead of the Emperor, we've got the Rigid. So the idea of the Emperor as this controlling, dominant authority figure has been translated into the Rigid. We've got the bone here, the animal skull. We've got these crystals, and then this eye. Is that the eye of authority, perhaps? And then you've got this bird. Is it a raven? Is it a crow? It looks to have 2 eyes on this side. So, very interesting cards, aren't they? So the guide instead of the Hierophant, I love that. I absolutely love that. Maybe not so sure about the hand chopped off. You know, that's going to be a bit of an issue if you're trying to read the magic books. But just the idea that it is the book itself, the guide itself, it's kind of similar in idea to the Hocus Pocus tarot deck that we looked at in the first week of Spooktober. Again, I'll put the link up here for that, where the book itself was the guide, was the teacher. So I've got to say, I do love that. And again, this sort of spooky arm chopped off, just giving you a little bit of macabre there. And I like the fact that instead of the sort of standard depiction of blood as being red and gory, we've got this gold, this sort of yellowy gold imagery coming in, which I think just works so well. So the Lovers, I mean, do I really need to explain this card? Instead of it being 2 people in love, we've got a pair of conjoined twins, or a 2-headed person, one with the eyes shut, one with the eyes open, maybe, or the other way round. Again, it's a spooky sort of image, isn't it? It's almost something you'd see from a Tim Burton film. But again, similar to, again, the Fifth Spirit tarot deck that I use a lot, where the Lovers is somebody looking at their shadow self. This could be the shadow self, couldn't it? You've got to learn to love yourself before you can love someone else, as RuPaul says. And this could be a depiction of that. I absolutely love it. Love it. Love it so much. This deck speaks to me on so many levels. And then we've got the Chariot. Can you see a chariot here? What can you actually see? Is this a beast leaning towards you from the shadows with paws outstretched? Is this the lights of a car or a vehicle or a train? What is being shown here in the darkness? There's just little hints of something. I love it. I love it because it's talking about a journey, but a journey where? Where does this card lead you? Where does this take us? What is this journey all about? I love the fact that this is really a journey into the soul almost. Absolutely love it. It's so simple a card. It really is. It just gives you a hint of something. And because it is that macabre deck, obviously it's based on the sort of the spooky side of things. It's just giving you a hint of something and asking more questions than it answers, which I've got to say, I absolutely adore. I really do. Strength. Is the strength the person holding the snake, or is strength the snake itself? That is the question. So we haven't got the standard lion here. We've got the snake. Now, obviously, there's all sorts of references to the snake in many, many cultures and many, many religions. Obviously, we can think about things like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and the serpent and all of that. But snakes are an incredible creature. They shed their skins. They have this amazing adaptability. They are an incredible creature, a very strong creature. So for me, the essence of the snake, that sort of survivability almost comes through, but also the fact that it's something that a lot of people are very fearful of. So the idea of holding the snake coiled around your hand here gives you that sense of power and control as well. Again, fascinating cards. The Hermit. So we've got a plague doctor who's also a skeleton. A Skelly Bob's plague doctor here. A very different depiction of the hermit, as you can see, but we've still got the lantern here. We've still got the lantern. So in the traditional depiction you've just seen, you see the lantern, and this lantern here is, again, a bit of a spookified version. But I just love the idea that the plague doctor, the person that nobody wants to see, the person that is absolutely on the outside of society because, you know, dealing with the plague, can't really mix with people, a bit like the old days of lockdown, which, funnily enough, we've just gone through. We've just got COVID again for like the 4th or 5th time. So I'm very, very acutely aware of this sort of iconography. But as the hermit, as the searcher of knowledge, seeking out that that truth, even though it always comes with a personal cost, separating yourself from the rest of society for the greater good. Absolutely love it. It really is just a perfect depiction for this deck. It really is. The Wheel of Fortune. We've got a ring of thorns with a spider's web, bats, and an eye. So a very different, again, I think I'm saying that for every single one of these cards. It's a very different depiction. You've still got the 4 sort of creatures, if you like, at the cardinal points, which is something that is a holdover from the traditional deck. But the idea here, there is definitely a risk element involved with this card, isn't there? Definitely a risk. You've got the thorns here. You've got the idea of entrapment. Is there a win here? Is there something in this card that hints at there being some good luck with the Wheel of Fortune? Not so sure about that, but there's definitely a risk, and definitely I'm not sure I would want to spin that wheel. You know what I mean? Justice. Love that. Love that. I know, right? That's all I'm saying for this deck. I need to think of something better other than just to say I love it. So we've got the Sands of Time. Eventually the Sands of Time take us all. It's the only thing we're guaranteed of in this world, isn't it? Death and taxes. And you've got the standard sort of scales here of justice. And then justice isn't just blind here. Look, it has no eyeballs at all. And the sands of time are dripping through. So again, wonderful, wonderful iconography, very different to the standard sort of Our Lady Justice, but it has the scales, it has that imagery still in there, which I must say I do love. I love when they've got such a different art style, such a different context, and yet they put in some of those sort of more traditional elements. I do like that a lot. So we've got the Hanged, not quite the Hanged Man or the Hanged One. This is again a very different depiction, but in this card we've got a mermaid that's been found, and it's a skeleton of a mermaid. Now this for me makes me think of the sort of circuses and freak shows of old, where they would cobble together like a dog skeleton with part of, you know, a monkey and part of a fish skeleton, and they'd sort of put them together and put them in some formaldehyde and make it look like, you know, and here you have the mermaid that was found. You know, give us your 2 shillings to see the mermaid. That sort of vibe with this card. And again, I love the fact that it's almost smiling. So like the traditional Hanged One or the Hangman, there is this element of choosing to be there, maybe with the little smile. I don't know why, but that really does look like the skull is smiling. The Death card, obviously no getting around that iconography here. We've got the Death's Head moth, is it? I think it's called. Is this the Black Dahlia? We've got is it a black mamba snake? We've got daggers. There's all sorts here with a coffin over the top. This is a very clear representation of the traditional word of death, isn't it? This isn't the more traditional Grim Reaper on a white horse carrying a scythe. This is lots of other iconography here. But again, the moth gives us that hint of transformation, as does the snake, because it sheds its skin. So there is still, even though we've got the coffin, we've got the other iconography here, and it's very dark looking, we've still got that element of transformation. We've still got that element of change within the deck, which I absolutely love. Again, similarly to the Hocus Pocus tarot deck, where the images were shoehorned in and there wasn't much of the standard tarot iconography, this is how I think this has been done right in this deck, because you've got the imagery which on the surface speaks of like death and destruction and doom and all of that. However, it is a moth, it is a snake. If you look for that imagery and that subtext, it is absolutely there. Again, a bit like the smiling the Hanged One there. Temperance. You see, now this completely, as soon as I say that about the Death card, we get to the Temperance card, and there's nothing here about the standard Temperance, apart from the fact that the goblet is collecting the liquids. Now, obviously, in a standard sort of tarot deck, Temperance is a very different card. It talks about finding a middle way. It talks about kind of coming up with a negotiated way, a compromise. There's not a lot of compromise here, but you could argue that actually talking and seeing through a different perspective would have actually saved this person's head. I'm reaching here. I'm absolutely reaching, but I do still like the imagery from this card. It's very not Temperance. It's kind of going for that other element of Temperance, where to temper something is to heat it and cool it and heat it and cool it and make it stronger. I don't get the impression that this person is dead, even though they're just a head. It doesn't feel like a dead head. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel any deader than any of the rest of the figures we've seen in the deck so far. It still feels like this head, this disembodied head, could have an entire conversation with you, which again, maybe it's just me, maybe it just speaks to something deep within me. Well, maybe not even that deep. Then we've got the Devil. So we've got a 3-eyed goat. I mean, there is lots of iconography here. There is lots of iconography. I could go into it and we could discuss the sort of the various elements here of the goat and how that connects, but I'm just going to leave it at that. I like the chains, because again, in a lot of standard depictions, you see 2 figures chained together, and it talks about contracts, it talks about devil in the details. So again, I really like that card. And then we've got the Tower. Now, again, when I was talking about the Hocus Pocus deck, the Tower in that card was just a house that had smoke coming off it. There was no threat to the house. In this card, you could argue that, again, it's on the surface a very similar depiction. It's just a house, right? It's not got the standard depiction of the tower being hit by lightning with the fire, the people jumping out. But when you actually look a little bit closer, you can see the house itself is falling apart. It's cracked. Everywhere is cracked. All the windows are cracked. The walls, the bricks on the foundation are the only thing solid, a bit like the traditional image of the tower with that sort of base on rocks. So that is solid. You've got these trees that seem to be growing out of the house itself. The windows are cracked. The door is cracked. And then you've got these figures. Now, these figures in the windows, they're not jumping out. They're not saving themselves yet. But are they going to? Are they going to jump out to try and rescue themselves? This house doesn't look that much more stable than the tower in the traditional deck. It just hasn't been hit by lightning, and it's not being threatened in quite the same way. But arguably, whilst the foundations are as solid as the rocks that the other one was built on, the actual tower itself is still going to end up with the same fate. It's still going to crumble. And this time round, it's because of nature itself. It isn't just because of the lightning and, you know, something coming from afar. It's almost coming from within, which, again, I love the iconography of this card. Absolutely beautiful. The star, we've got Medusa with a skull without a top and with lots of golden liquid. Yes, good job it isn't red. It would probably, if this deck was red with all of this gold liquid being red, I would probably have issues with the YouTube algorithm. Why is Medusa the star? I've got no idea, to be honest with you. Absolutely no idea. The standard depiction of the star is a celestial being. I guess the Gorgon, the Medusa, I guess there's an element here that it's a celestial being. It's a deity form. Why it's depicted like this, I don't know. I'm just ever so glad that the eyes are not looking at me and the snakes have not quite realized that I'm looking at her. But again, I love the beauty, the simplicity and the beauty of this card. Again, so it's another one we're going to have to look at the book for. So the ethereal, the Empress, and the star, just to try and work that out. The moon, we've got more of a traditional image, although it's not quite the same moon that I remember. You know what I mean? It's not quite the jolly man in the moon that we're seeing on screen now, or the sort of, you know, lumps and bumps and craters. This is very much a dead skull moon thing, which I just love. I love it. And then we've got the sun. Now, this is a freaky sun. This is not a happy, smiley emoji sun, is it? There's something about this grin and these eyes. The mouth saying everything's fine, but the eyes are saying, not so much. Please help me. I don't really want to be in this deck. This is a very spooky deck. And yeah, I'm supposed to bring light, but even I've got clouds. You know what I mean? There's just something about this card. It's traditionally, again, the sun is a card of growth, so it's lots of bright elements. I love the fact that they've chosen not to use that gold color in this at all. It's all done in shadows and dark and sort of smoky, but there's just something about the way that the sun is grinning at us. I think it's a very, very, very creepy image, almost like a clown, almost like a clown's face. But yeah, Judgment. Then we've got Judgment. The horn is perhaps going through the head. I think it's actually just behind the head, but the horn has been blown. But this person was not ready to be judged. They were not ready for judgment, were they? So traditionally you see the Archangel Gabriel, I think it is, blowing the horn, calling the souls forward up to heaven to be judged. This poor soul was not ready to be judged, and they have turned to mush. Again, spooky, but wonderfully spooky. And then the last card is the world. And of course, we've got the standard sort of wreath, as you see in a lot of depictions of the world. But instead of having the figure in the center or the planets or anything like that, we've got the skull with an eye here where the wreath parts join. We've actually got an eye, the all-seeing eye perhaps, but you can see it's shedding a single tear of blood. It's just something wonderful about this deck. Wonderfully spooky, wonderfully macabre. Right. Okay, so as I said when we looked at the magician, the suits have been renamed. So instead of wands, we've got bones. So we've got the ace of bones here, and it's obviously a spine dripping in spinal fluid. The two of bones, the three of bones, the four, again bringing in that traditional idea for me of fours being stability. I mean, it almost looks like entrails here draped between the bones, but it's still stable, isn't it? It's still stable, kinda. And then we've got upheaval. The bones are being dug up. They are being upturned. The six of bones. The seven. And then the eight. Now, this is for me one of the nearest depictions that you're going to find to a standard Rider-Waite-Smith image in this deck. Yes, it's bones instead of wands, but you've got that same idea of them all being somehow up in the air. And I've always said it's like you've picked up the bones or you've picked up the wands and you've thrown them out the window and you're making those choices about where to go next. And again, this is very, very similar iconography. I love it. And I also love the fact that, again, like the spinal fluid, we've got these little elements here of yellow discoloration. And of course, we know what the yellow means in this deck. And we've got the nine of bones. Just a beautiful depiction. I love that. I think it's almost like a watercolor, isn't it? It's almost like where you've got this very hard cartoony image here, and then we flip to this and it's almost soft focus watercolory type images. Love it, love it, love it, love it. The 10, piercing the hand, and then instead of page, knight, queen and king, instead of page, we've got the terror of bones. Instead of knight, we've got the nightmare. Instead of queen, we've got the haunting. And instead of king, we've got the massacre. So that's the bones. Then we've got the daggers or the swords. Again, this little serpent imagery coming back in. So we've got the ace of daggers. The two of daggers. Again, more serpents. It's definitely trouble and strife with this, isn't there? The three of daggers. So a very standard, again, this again is very similar to the eight of bones for the Rider-Waite, because this is similar to the three of swords with the three daggers, in this case piercing the heart. But look, we've got this eye. It just makes it a little bit freakier. So yes, it's still dealing with heartache, but it's kind of saying, yes, I know that my heart is broken, but I will persevere. I will get through it. The four of daggers. The five, gruesome image there, look. The six with a spectral image. The seven, perhaps taken on more than you can handle, quite literally. The eight, blindfolded, trapped. Not a lot of choices there. The 9, the daggers have become the eyelashes with that single teardrop again. And then the 10, very spooky images. And then again, we've got the page or the terror. She's doing very elaborate waves in her hair, look, using that hot dagger, even though it's causing a few issues. The nightmare of daggers. The haunting, another spectral image. And then the massacre. Just in case clowns weren't scary enough. And where's that gold liquid come from? That's enough to give you nightmares, isn't it? And then we've got cups, which in this deck have been called cups. So we've got the Ace of Cups, an eyeball instead of an olive, and a finger, because, you know, that's what everybody wants in their martini, isn't it? Again, that suspicious gold liquid. The Two of Cups, a little bit of yin and yang going on here. Poison in one, love spell in the other, and these opposites. The Three of Cups. The 4, I wonder what was in that cup that he drank. The 5 of Cups there, look. 3 empty bottles that are cracked. And then the 2 full ones. Are you crying over the ones that you've lost? I mean, I'd be more concerned about your entrails and everything hanging out and where the bottom half of your body was. But, you know, you do you, boo. The 6 of Cups. That looks, yeah, I'm not going to say what that looks like, but it looks like something you'd have to pay a lot of money in a very specific club in London for. The 7. The 8 of Cups. Not one for you if you're scared of arachnids. The 9 of Cups. Very interesting imagery. And then the 10. The Rainbow of Cups there. Lovely, lovely image. And then this snake coiled around the anatomical heart. The Terror of Cups. The Nightmare of Cups. The Haunting. And the Massacre. Makes you wonder what's in that vial, isn't it? What's in that bottle? And then we've got crystals, which would be pentacles or coins or discs in a standard tarot deck. So we've got the Ace there with, I'd like to think of these as ratties, but I don't think they are. They almost look a bit more marsupial. I don't quite know what they would be, but interesting. The 2 of Crystals, again with that infinity sign. You see that quite often with the 2 of Pence. The 3. Is this showing you blood diamonds and the things that you have to go through for those? Question, question, question. The 4 of Crystals, again, another one of these spectral figures. The 5. The 6. Being dropped by the hand as the hand's been chopped. Pay a heavy price. The 7. I think some of these would make wonderful tattoo images. I really, really do. And then the 8. There's a lot of effort being put in. Look, bouncing it from one crystal to the next, making sure that everything is watered. the 9, the 10, and then again, this is, again, maybe this will be done in that same club in London, you know what I mean? There's something very very adult about that. The Terror of Crystals. Then the Nightmare of Crystals. Now that would give you nightmares. Look at that jaw. That would absolutely give you nightmares. That's a scream that, it's kind of a scream of silence, isn't it? The Haunting of Crystals. Crystal where the heart should be. For the Queen of Discs or the Queen of Pentacles. And then finally, the Massacre of Crystals. So there you go. That is what the suits look like and the majors look like. Okay, so let's look at the little book then. So at the front of the book, we've got our contents pages, bit of an introduction. It says here, in Jungian psychology, the shadow is the unknown parts of yourself. Shadow work, a long process that involves meditation and introspection, allows you to dive deep within your own psyche and connect with the parts you wouldn't otherwise know. The Macabre Tarot is a deck designed for shadow work, the exploration of the sides of yourself you'd prefer others not to see. Many shadow workers allow themselves a safe space to explore their own darkness. Tarot is a great tool for opening yourself up to your shadow, as it asks you questions you wouldn't otherwise consider. Shadow work happens when you stop pushing out the dark, intrusive thoughts born of anger, sadness, and disgust that sneak in when you're trying to fall asleep at night, and take the time to get to know them. Knowing your true, authentic self is only possible when you work to understand all of your sides. The Macabre Tarot is all about all things dark and scary. The artwork was born out of the artist's own shadow work and exploration of the macabre, the dark and creepy sides. In the spiritual community, we're often encouraged to only embrace the love and light, but shadow work demands we see both sides of the coin. While creating the art, the artist acknowledged the positive message each card had to give, but pushed deeper to also see what warnings they had to offer. This deck is built off the traditional 78 card tarot structure with 22 major arcana and 56 minor arcana cards, but focuses more on the warnings and dark messages they have to offer. If you're looking for love and light, turn back now. This is not the deck for you. These cards are your guide into darkness, into the recesses of your psyche, as it is only through exploring your darkest sides that you can find your way into true light. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Then we've got a couple of spreads here. Looks like we've got a few spreads. I think we'll go with the 4-card spread in a bit at the end. Before we do, let's have a look at the Empress card, wasn't it? That's what we were going to look at, or the Ethereal in this deck. And it says the Ethereal, previously the Empress. Upright is creation, nurturing, and fertility. And the reversal is suffocation. The ethereal is creative spirit, the nurturing warmth. It is fertility in all of its forms, the birth of a child, spirit, or project. It's making something that didn't previously exist and is also material warmth and endless abundance. Take time to connect with your creative spirit and look for opportunities to be warm and receptive. Love that interpretation of the Empress. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. The Chariot we were going to look at, weren't we? So it says upright, momentum and movement, and the reversal is being lost or lack of drive. And it's got the smallest write-up ever. It just says the Chariot has a single meaning. It's time to go. Run. If you're standing still, what are you waiting for? Run, run, run. I can't wait to use these. It's so cool. It really, really, really is. They're a nice feeling card, actually. Let's look at the card stock, just because I normally do that on these reviews. So it's quite a thick card. Look, that's a single. It's definitely a single card. quite thick, quite durable. They've got, again, that nice sort of, they're not matte and they're not gloss. It's kind of that in between, which I really do like, actually. Now then, let's just embarrass myself again by attempting yet another riffle shuffle. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to riffle shuffle. I mean, not the best riffle shuffle in the world, but you know, it gives us an idea that the cards, they haven't bent as some of the other decks have, so that's quite cool. Oh, we've got cards going everywhere though, so there you go. They're sort of shuffled enough, I think. It's not as well shuffled as some of my decks would be, where I've been shuffling them and working with them for a long time, but they've had a decent enough shuffle. So I'll just do a quick cut and we'll see what the spread is that we're going to do as the 4-card spread. Here we go. So card 1, where are you currently? Oh, we've got the Haunting of Bones. So the Queen of Wands or the Haunting of Bones, this would be talking about, for me, maybe my sense of self, my sense of self-esteem, the way that I conduct myself, the way I have confidence in myself. And the Queen for me would still be that nurturing energy, even though she's reversed. It would still be that element of looking after myself, looking after others. But for me, the reversal here is, I think it's something that I'm not very good at, which is kind of promoting myself and talking about my own abilities very positively. I have a lot of quite negative self-talk at times about my own abilities, not just in tarot, but in lots of fields. And I think that is something that I do try to work on constantly. But interesting that that's come up like that. Okay, so the second card is what is giving me a false sense of safety. And we've got the Ace of Daggers. So the Ace of Swords, that would normally mean for me the start of a new project for the Ace, and the Swords would be trouble and strife. So there's something here that I'm trying to work on, but it's bringing its own hurdles. But the false sense of safety, that's really interesting because it's reversed. It's saying that I kind of think, or I'm lulling myself into thinking, that the work's already been done, and that this Queen of Wands reversal here, the thing that where I am currently, I kind of think that that project's already been done, and maybe it hasn't. Maybe I do need to listen and work on being able to talk positively about my own abilities and my own skills a bit more. It's something I'm really struggling with. So that's interesting that that's come up as the false sense of safety. Okay, so the third card is, what shadow is dwelling just beyond those feelings of safety? So this is a really deep spread. I wonder it's called Explore the Shadow. Maybe I should have chosen another one, but anyway, right. So what shadow is dwelling just beyond those feelings of safety? And we've got another reversed card, the 9 of Crystals. Okay, so the 9 of Pentacles. So lots of work, lots of effort being done, but it's not finished. It hasn't been signed off and ticked off yet. There's still work to do. I think I'm finished, but I'm not. Wow, this is quite deep, isn't it? I think I'm finished and I'm not. There's still effort and work to put in, and actually I've barely scratched the surface. Wow, this is intense. Wow, this, if I use this deck on a live stream, it's going to have to be maybe an after hours live stream, because wow, this is intense. The shadow dwelling just beyond those feelings of safety, thinking that I've done the inner work and I haven't. Okay, so far all of them are reversed. I mean, okay. And then card 4, how can you reach that shadow? How can I reach the shadow of feeling that I'd done the work, even though I haven't, and that feeling of actually I need to maybe go back to square one. How can I reach that shadow? Okay, let's find out. The guide reversed. I mean, at least we've got a major card. Wow. Okay, so I've got 3 different suits and a major. I'll tell you what, let's have a look at what the major says. What the equivalent would be the Hierophant. So it says blindly following. The guide is a book laid out in front of you that has listed all of society's conventions and rules. Wow. It's filled with laws and moral teachings. It's time to pick up a pen and start making your own annotations. Connect with your moral compass. There's my compass. And choose the laws you live by. Learn from teachers you choose, not those chosen for you. So I need to go on another learning journey to get to the point where I can speak openly about my abilities. And maybe this is actually, again, this is spooky, everybody. I don't even know whether I'm going to be comfortable putting this on the video. There is something that I've been working at, and I've been saying I'm going to do it for next year, which is going into the more mediumship side of things and talking about the fact that I am bloody good at tarot. And even now, just saying that now is making me feel all sorts of feelings, because I don't often talk about my abilities in that way. But I think that's what this card is pointing to. And the fact that I struggle with it and thought that I'd maybe got better at it, this is coming up and maybe saying, actually, there's a false sense here, a false sense of hope that I'd got over these inner doubts and inner sort of inability to talk about the things that I'm good at in life, and that feeling of inferiority that I do suffer from. And then to go deeper and unlock the feeling of thinking I'd already done the work, and then the guide is coming up and saying, actually, do you know what, there's still quite a journey here for you to go on, and there's still quite some deep learning for me to do. Wow. Okay, well, there you go, everyone. That's quite a deep shadow reading for me. I wasn't expecting that. Wow. Okay, let's swap cameras. Well then, I'm not quite sure what to say after that. Every single one of these deck reviews that I've done has surprised me in the way that the spreads that I'm using and the cards that I'm using, without asking a question, without looking into anything specific, without using my dragons and doing any connection and any sort of deep longing soul searching, just leaving the cards to fall where they will, has been quite eye-opening for me. So yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's because I've just cut the reading that I did myself, because it was quite powerful. Overall then, what do I think about this deck? Well, I think it is absolutely stunning to look at. First of all, the art style I absolutely love. It is right up my street. I think it's spooky in places, gory in places, but I do think it asks some very, very interesting questions from the actual artwork style itself. You know, what does this card mean for me? What does this card look like? The packaging is wonderful. It's not going to work for you if you've got all your tarot decks on a shelf. You know what I mean? I mean, this is the Fifth Spirit that I use all the time. There's no way it's going to fit on the same shelf. It's about the same thickness, but it's just not going to work. However, it would work as a decorative piece. So you could keep the box there and then just put the actual cards and the little guidebook perhaps in a little pouch. That would work. The cards themselves, I think the quality of the cards is fantastic. The stock is good. I love the sort of, it's not matte, but it's also not gloss. It's kind of somewhere in between. The feel of the deck I really like. I like the back. So from an aesthetic perspective, it ticks all my boxes. Would I recommend that you use it? This is the $64 million question. Would I recommend you use this deck? Yes and no. So if you are a beginner tarot reader, then no, absolutely not. If you're just coming into tarot and you're wanting to explore what the cards are, the traditional meanings, all of that, then absolutely not. The guidebook is very limited as to the information it gives from a traditional perspective. The cards themselves, there's only a handful that are even sort of similar to the standard sort of tarot iconography. The fact that they've renamed the suits, they've renamed the court cards, they've renamed some of the majors. I think if you're fairly new to tarot, this deck is just going to confuse the fuck out of you, to be honest. It really, really is. However, I would recommend it if you're a bit more of an experienced tarot reader. If you've got a couple of decks, you've been reading for maybe a couple of years, you're fairly au fait with the traditional meanings, and you're wanting to take a step into the more liminal, the more sort of shadow side. Equally, because it's got lots of that Jungian archetype, anybody who comes to tarot from a psychology perspective and wants to really have a tool to tap into some shadow work, I would recommend it for that as well. But you're not necessarily going to be able to use this deck to learn the tarot from. So again, as a shadow only deck, I can recommend it for people that are just wanting to do shadow work. For tarot readers, I don't think it's going to be a deck you're going to be using every single day to the public. However, I will do a late night after dark tarot live stream using these and maybe a couple of the other spooky decks. And I'm really looking forward to sort of how deep and how kind of intricate we can get with that. Because again, in the little 4-card reading that I did myself, without asking a question, without bringing in the dragons, without doing any of the usual stuff, just literally going on some random cards, that was quite intense. And it's given me a lot to think about. So again, not for beginners, and not necessarily for every experienced tarot reader either. But if you are looking for something different, if you're looking for something that is going to ask some really difficult questions, then yes, I totally recommend. Now, to my goth friends out there, yes, the artwork is very macabre, and I know that you'll be watching this going, oh my God, it's so wonderful, I need to go and buy it now. I would only say to you as well, the same. If you've been reading for a while, pick it up. Don't get drawn into this deck just because it is so macabre and spooky and wonderfully out there and freaky. Don't let that mean that this is going to be a card deck that you can use unless you're fairly au fait with the tarot, because again, it is so removed from traditional tarot. It's almost like an oracle deck. So if you're a beginner tarot reader, you'd have to treat it almost like an oracle deck because it is so different from the traditional tarot in its symbology, its meanings, and its aesthetics. But for that exact reason, that's why I really love it. So those are my thoughts and feelings. Let me know yours down in the comment section. Is this a deck that you've ever come across before? Is it something that you are drawn to, like the death moth to a flame? Or is this something that now you've had a good look at it and you've seen the intensity of the questions that it asks, that you're realizing maybe isn't for you? Let me know your thoughts and feelings down in the comments section. Also, let me know if you'd be interested in a tarot after hours where we do ask some of those difficult questions. It might have to be on a members only stream. That's the only thing I'm thinking. So let me know your thoughts and feelings about that as well down in the comment section. But that is going to be it for me today. There's a card coming up here with all of my other tarot deck reviews, including the ones for Spooktober. And right here, YouTube is recommending a playlist for you as well. But that is going to be it for me today. And as I always say, stay you, stay true, stay authentic, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.